What happens when one of the most powerful figures in American politics sits down for what's supposed to be a routine interview, only for the conversation to spiral into one of the most explosive on-camera confrontations ever seen? What happens when a veteran journalist refuses to back down and a former president refuses to be questioned? This is the story of an interview that was meant to last 30 minutes, but turned into something nobody could have predicted. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop your thoughts in the comments, because trust me, you're going to have opinions about this one. The studio lights felt brighter than usual that day. Diane Sawyer sat across from Donald Trump on a set designed to look casual, 2 chairs, a small table between them, and a glass of water for each guest. But the atmosphere was anything but relaxed. Multiple cameras were positioned to capture every glance, every gesture, every flicker of tension. The production team had spent hours perfecting every detail. Yet no one knew they were about to witness a moment that would dominate headlines for weeks. Diane opened with her trademark warmth, the same calm, inviting tone that made her one of America's most trusted journalists. "Mr. Trump, thank you so much for sitting down with us today. I know your schedule is incredibly demanding, and we appreciate your time." Trump leaned back, radiating confidence. "Well, Diane, I've always respected you. You're fair, unlike a lot of people in the media who just attack. You're one of the good ones." "I appreciate that," Diane replied, her tone shifting ever so slightly. "And because I want to be fair, I think it's important we address some serious questions that have come up recently." Trump didn't move much, but something in his posture tightened. "Sure, ask me anything. I'm an open book." "There's been a lot of discussion about your business dealings before you entered politics," Diane began. "Specifically, allegations that some of those deals may have involved foreign entities in ways that could have compromised ethical boundaries." The air in the studio seemed to drop a few degrees. Trump leaned forward, jaw set. "Who's saying this? Who are these people making allegations? Because I've been investigated more than anyone in this country's history, and they've never found anything. Nothing." "I understand your frustration," Diane said steadily, "but these allegations are based on financial records recently uncovered, documents suggesting payments made to offshore accounts that were then routed through various business entities. The pattern raises concerns." Trump's face darkened. "Documents? What documents? Was it the same people who said I colluded with Russia? The same fake news media that's been after me since day one? Diane, this is a witch hunt. That's what this is." "Nobody's making anything up," Diane replied firmly. "These are financial records. Numbers don't lie. The question isn't whether you've been investigated before. The question is whether these specific transactions were appropriate." Trump's voice rose. "Everything I've ever done has been appropriate. More than appropriate. I've built an empire, Diane, created jobs, opportunities, deals no one else could. And now you're sitting here questioning my integrity over a few papers someone found? Who found them? Where did they come from?" Diane held his gaze. This was the moment, the make-or-break point of the interview. "The papers came from a whistleblower inside one of your former companies," she said. "Someone who worked closely with you for years and claims to have witnessed transactions that were deliberately hidden. Money moved to avoid scrutiny. Deals made with the understanding they'd never be disclosed." The silence that followed was electric. Trump stared at her, eyes narrowing, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it looked like he might stand up and walk out. The control room froze. The camera operators held steady. Finally, Trump spoke, his voice low and sharp. "A whistleblower," he repeated. "You're basing this entire thing on a so-called whistleblower? Diane, do you know how many disgruntled employees I've had over the years? People who are jealous, bitter, and angry because they couldn't succeed like I did? That's what this is. Pure bitterness." The tension in the room was palpable, and the interview was only just beginning. "This is ridiculous, Diane. I thought you were better than this." "This isn't about being better or worse," Diane replied evenly. "This is about accountability. You've held the highest office in the land. You asked the American people to trust you, to believe in you, to follow your leadership. When questions arise about your conduct, don't you think they deserve honest answers?" "I've given answers," Trump shot back, his tone rising. I've answered more questions than any president in history. More press conferences, more interviews, more everything, and it's never enough. There's always another accusation, another witch hunt. When does it end, Diane? When do I get to live my life without people trying to tear me down? Diane leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but cutting. This isn't about tearing you down. It's about the truth. And the truth is, there are documents showing wire transfers worth millions of dollars to accounts in countries with questionable ties to the United States. There are emails discussing how to structure these deals to avoid attention. There are recordings where you allegedly talked about keeping certain transactions quiet. These aren't attacks, Mr. Trump. These are facts. Trump's hand came down hard on the armrest. Not quite a slam, but close. Facts? You call that facts? Show me the documents. Show me the emails. Let me hear the recordings because they don't exist. And if they do exist, they've been doctored, edited, taken out of context by people who hate me and want me destroyed. So you're denying you ever engaged in offshore transactions? Diane asked, her voice sharp now. Illegal ones? Trump shot back. No, everything I did was legal. You understand that word, Diane? It means I didn't break any laws. I played by the rules, rules that were stacked against me. And I still won. Legal and ethical, Diane said quietly, aren't always the same thing. That sentence hung in the air like smoke. Trump's eyes flashed with something between anger and disbelief. You're seriously lecturing me about ethics? You, working for a network that's been caught in scandals, accused of bias, pushing narratives instead of facts? You want to talk to me about ethics? I'm not here to defend my network, Diane replied coolly. I'm here to ask questions the American people deserve to have answered. Attacking the media doesn't change the substance of what we're discussing. The substance, Trump echoed, his tone dripping with sarcasm. The substance is that you invited me here under false pretenses. You said we'd be talking about my vision for the future, my plans for the country, and instead you ambush me with conspiracy theories and anonymous accusations. That's not journalism, Diane. That's a setup. It's not a setup to ask difficult questions, Diane countered. And I told your team we'd be covering a range of topics, including some that might be uncomfortable. If you weren't prepared for that, maybe this interview shouldn't have happened. Trump suddenly stood, the movement sharp enough to make the entire room flinch. For a moment, it looked like he might walk out. Producers froze. Cameras stayed locked. Then, slowly, he sat back down, jaw tight, eyes fixed on Diane. I'm not going anywhere, he said. You want to do this? Fine, let's do it. Ask your questions. But you're making a mistake, Diane. You're going down a path that's going to make you look bad, not me. I'll take that risk, Diane said calmly. So let's get specific. In 2014, your organization allegedly received a payment of $15 million from a shell company based in Cyprus. That company had ties to individuals later sanctioned by the U.S. government for corruption. What was that payment for? Trump exhaled, his voice suddenly quieter but colder. You want an explanation? Fine. I'll give you one you might actually understand. When you're operating at the level I was, you don't always get to choose the cleanest path. You've got competitors who'll do anything to destroy you, foreign governments that make the rules impossible to follow, and a system that punishes success. So yes, sometimes money moves through different channels. Sometimes deals are structured to protect the people involved. That's not corruption, Diane, that's survival. Diane's eyebrow arched slightly. So you're admitting the transactions happened, but you're justifying them as necessary? I'm not admitting anything, Trump said quickly, realizing the trap. I'm speaking hypothetically. I'm explaining how business works in the real world, not in whatever fantasy land journalists live in, where everything's black and white and the people making the rules have never built a single thing in their lives. The rules exist for a reason, Diane said, her voice calm but unyielding. They exist to prevent exactly the kind of corruption these documents suggest you engaged in. Trump laughed, a short, sharp sound with no real humor behind it. Corruption. You keep using that word, Diane. Do you even know what real corruption is? Real corruption is when politicians take money from special interests and then vote the way those interests want. It's when bureaucrats hand out government contracts to their friends and family. It's when people in power use their positions to enrich themselves at the expense of taxpayers. That's corruption. What I did, what you're accusing me of, that's just business. Business that involved hiding money, Diane interjected. Business that involved dealing with criminals. Business that could have compromised your ability to act in the national interest when you became president. Potentially compromised, Trump repeated, his tone dripping with mockery. Listen to yourself, potentially, allegedly. Those are weasel words, Diane. That's what people say when they don't have proof but still want to smear someone. Diane calmly lifted another sheet of paper. This is an email from you to one of your business partners, she said. It reads, and I'm quoting directly, "We need to keep the Cyprus deal off the books for now. Too many eyes on us with the campaign ramping up. Once things settle down, we can move forward, but discretion is critical." Those are your words. How is that not evidence of deliberate concealment? Trump's face flickered through several emotions. Shock, anger, calculation. Where did you get that? He demanded. That's not the question, Diane replied coolly. The question is what you meant by keeping it off the books. Why were you worried about too many eyes? What were you trying to hide? I wasn't hiding anything, Trump said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier fire. That email, if it's even real, which I doubt, is taken completely out of context. In business, discretion is normal. You don't announce every deal before it's finalized. That's just common sense. This wasn't about announcing a deal, Diane countered. This was about keeping it off the books entirely. That's not discretion. That's concealment. Trump pushed himself to his feet again, this time yanking at his microphone. You know what, Diane? I think we're done here. This isn't an interview, it's a character assassination. I'm not going to sit here and let you do this to me. Sit down, Diane said. Her tone didn't rise, but there was steel in it. You agreed to this interview. You told me you were an open book. You told me to ask anything, and I am. If you walk out now, everyone watching will know you did it because you couldn't answer the questions. Trump's hand hovered over the mic clip. The room went silent. No one moved. The producers, the camera operators, even the assistants seemed frozen in place. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Trump lowered himself back into his chair. The microphone dangled loose, a visible reminder that he was still 1 second away from walking out. Ask your questions, he said coldly. But I'm telling you right now, Diane, you're going to regret this. I'm not concerned about regret, Diane said. I'm concerned about truth. So let's talk about the people you did business with. She slid another page forward. One of the individuals connected to that Cyprus payment was later convicted of money laundering and arms trafficking. Another was implicated in a corruption scandal that brought down an entire government. These weren't minor players. These were dangerous criminals, and you did business with them. I did business with companies, Trump snapped. Companies that employed thousands of people. You can't hold me responsible for every single person connected to them. That's insane. But these weren't just employees, Diane pressed. These were principals, the people in charge. The ones who made the decisions, who moved the money, who controlled the operations. Your organization transferred funds to them. You received funds from them. You can't distance yourself from that. Trump leaned back, crossing his arms. Watch me. I can and I will. Because I didn't know who they were. You're using hindsight, Diane. You're looking back now with all this new information and pretending I should have known it then. That's not fair, and you know it. Actually, Diane said, pulling another document from the folder, intelligence reports from that period show at least 2 of those individuals were already on international watch lists. They were under investigation, monitored by law enforcement. Your organization could have accessed that information with proper due diligence. Could have, Trump repeated quickly. But did we? Do you have proof we were given that information and ignored it? Or are you just assuming that because it existed somewhere, we must have seen it? Diane paused. For the first time in the entire interview, her composure wavered ever so slightly. Then she said quietly, We have testimony from a former member of your security team, someone who says he personally briefed you and handed you a document outlining those exact warnings. Testimony, Trump scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. From yet another bitter ex-employee, I'm sure. Probably someone who got fired for incompetence and now wants to make a name for himself by going after me. That's your big evidence? The word of someone with an axe to grind? And you call that journalism? It's journalism, Diane shot back, her tone cool and unshaken, when multiple sources tell the same story. It's journalism when the documents line up with the testimony. It's journalism when there's a consistent pattern of questionable behavior over years of business activity. This isn't about one person's grudge, Mr. Trump. This is about a pattern. Trump slowly shook his head, a humorless smile playing at his lips. You've already decided what you believe. You came here with a script and you're twisting everything to fit it. That's not journalism, Diane. That's activism. That's propaganda. If it's propaganda, Diane challenged, leaning forward, then prove me wrong. Show me where the documents are false. Explain why the offshore accounts exist. Tell me why the coded language in those emails doesn't mean what it clearly implies. Give me something, anything besides denial and deflection. For a long moment, Trump said nothing. His eyes drifted past the cameras, calculating. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, deliberate, and edged with steel. You want the truth, Diane? The truth is that when you operate on a global scale, you deal with imperfect people and imperfect systems. You work in countries where corruption is part of the fabric. You adapt. You find ways to get things done. That's not criminal, that's reality. Do I personally meet every person involved in every deal? No. Do I personally approve every transaction, every payment? Of course not. I have people for that. I built an organization filled with experts whose job was to manage those details. But you were the boss, Diane countered. The responsibility ends with you. When your organization engages in shady dealings, you don't get to hide behind ignorance. I'm not hiding, Trump snapped, his patience cracking. I'm explaining how the real world works. If you can't tell the difference between doing business in a complicated world and committing crimes, then this whole conversation is a waste of time. Fine, Diane said, steady as ever. Let's talk specifics. An Eastern European real estate deal. Your company bought a property far below market value from a front company tied to an oligarch under criminal investigation. Less than a year later, you sold it for triple the price. That's not savvy business. That's a red flag for money laundering. Trump's jaw tightened. A muscle in his cheek twitched. That deal was investigated, he said through his teeth. You think I'm afraid of your questions? He suddenly barked, his voice echoing in the studio. You think I'm running from this? I'm not afraid of anything, Diane, but I know what this is. You're not looking for truth. You're trying to create a moment. You want your viral clip, your soundbite, your scandal, and I'm not giving it to you. He took a step toward the exit, then paused. After a long beat, he turned back, walked to the chair, but didn't sit. He gripped the back of it with both hands, his knuckles pale. A production assistant approached hesitantly with a spare microphone, but Trump waved him off. I don't need that, he said flatly. Everyone can hear me just fine. Will you sit? Diane asked. I'll stand, Trump replied. I've been sitting here while you accuse me of crimes I didn't commit. Now you can listen to me for a change. I've been listening, Diane said evenly, but you still haven't answered the questions. That's because your questions, Trump shot back, are garbage. Trump fired back, his voice sharp with anger. They're based on fake documents, lying witnesses, and a predetermined agenda to make me look bad. But you know what? I'm going to answer them anyway, because I want everyone watching to see exactly what I'm dealing with here. To see the bias, the setup, Diane nodded calmly. All right then, let's continue. The Eastern European real estate deal. You said it was investigated and nothing was found. But why was it purchased through a shell corporation instead of your primary business entity? Trump's hands tightened on the back of the chair. It's called asset protection, Diane. When you're doing business overseas, especially in unstable regions, you structure deals in ways that protect your investments. That's not shady. That's smart business. The shell corporation was registered in a tax haven, Diane countered. It had no employees, no office, nothing but a mailing address and a bank account. That's not protection. That's concealment. It's both, Trump snapped. You separate assets to protect them. Every major corporation does this. Apple, Google, Amazon. But when I do it, suddenly it's a crime. Those companies, Diane said evenly, aren't accused of doing business with criminals. They're not accused of using shell corporations to hide payments or launder money. Trump slammed his hand on the chair. Because those accusations are false. How many times do I have to say it? How many ways do I have to explain that this is all made up? Then explain the money, Diane pressed, her voice rising to meet his. Explain where it came from, where it went, and why it passed through 5 different accounts in 3 countries before landing back in your company's hands. Just explain it. I can't explain every single financial transaction from years ago, Trump said, his voice strained. That's why I had accountants, lawyers, financial experts. They handled those details. But you signed off on them, Diane shot back, sliding a document toward him. These show your signature approving the transfers, the structures, the deals. You can't claim ignorance when your name is right there. Trump's face flushed red. My signature is on thousands of documents, tens of thousands. You think I personally read every line? You think I investigated every name? That's not how global business works. Then maybe, Diane said quietly, you shouldn't have been running a global business. And maybe, if you couldn't ensure your company wasn't dealing with criminals or corrupt officials, you shouldn't have run for president. The room went silent. Even the camera operators seemed frozen. Trump stood rigid behind the chair, his mouth slightly open. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and dangerous. You have no right to say that to me. I built my business from the ground up. I created jobs. I built buildings. I made this country stronger through my success. Then I took that success to the White House and fixed what was broken. And you sit there and tell me I shouldn't have run? Who do you think you are? I'm a journalist, Diane said simply. And you're someone who owes the American people answers. If these allegations are true, if you engaged in corrupt business practices, they have a right to know. They deserve to know who they elected, what kind of deals you made, and what you may have compromised to make them. There were no compromises, Trump growled. Not in business, not in politics, not ever. Everything I did was in the best interest of my company, my family, and my country. If you can't see that because of your bias, that's your problem, not mine. Diane leaned forward. Here's what I see. Someone who spent the last hour dodging questions, attacking the press, and threatening lawsuits instead of giving straight answers. Someone who says he has nothing to hide, but hides money in offshore accounts. Someone who says he's innocent, but whose business partners are in prison. That's what I see. Trump stepped around the chair, facing her directly as the cameras tracked every move. And I see a journalist who's forgotten what journalism means. Someone more interested in spectacle than truth. Someone who'll destroy a person's reputation on rumors and half-truths. And you'll answer for this interview when the truth comes out. The truth is out, Diane said firmly. It's in the documents. It's in the testimonies. It's in the pattern that's been there for decades. The only person who needs to answer for anything is you. Trump pointed at her, his hand trembling slightly. You're going to regret this, Diane. When history looks back, you'll be remembered as the journalist who tried to take down a president with fake news and failed. Because that's what this is. Fake news. Calling something fake doesn't make it fake, Diane replied, and anger doesn't erase facts. These transactions happened. These convictions happened. Those are facts, and facts don't care about your feelings or your threats. Trump let out a harsh, mirthless laugh. Facts? You wouldn't know a fact if it hit you in the face. You built this whole interview on anonymous sources, forged documents, and the lies of criminals trying to save themselves. That's not journalism. That's a witch hunt. If it's a witch hunt, Diane said calmly, then who's hunting you? The whistleblowers who risked everything to speak up? The investigators who followed the money for years? The journalists who verified every detail before publishing? Or is everyone lying, and you're the only one telling the truth? Trump's expression shifted. The anger remained, but beneath it flickered something else. Calculation, maybe even a hint of doubt. You really believe all this, don't you? He said quietly. You actually think you've uncovered some great scandal? I do, Diane replied. Because the evidence supports it. And because holding powerful people accountable is what journalism is supposed to do. It's not about taking sides. It's about the truth. So what do you think of this explosive interview? Do the allegations against Trump hold weight, or did Diane Sawyer go too far? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Because when powerful people refuse to answer questions, sometimes their silence says more than any answer ever could.